Question 1. Compliance review shows that a financial advisor in Utah has been asked by a client, who is a resident of another state, to provide a letter of recommendation to support their application for a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. The client believes the advisor's endorsement will strengthen their application. What is the most appropriate course of action for the financial advisor to take in this situation? Option A. Advise the client to research the requirements for a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit on the Utah Department of Public Safety website. Option B. Provide a letter of recommendation for the concealed firearm permit application, stating that the client is a valued client and appears to be financially responsible. Option C. Offer to assist the client in completing the application form for the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, as the advisor is familiar with the client's personal information. Option D. Politely decline to provide a recommendation or endorsement for the concealed firearm permit application, explaining that it falls outside the advisor's professional scope and expertise. The correct answer is D. Politely decline to provide a recommendation or endorsement for the concealed firearm permit application, explaining that it falls outside the advisor's professional scope and expertise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a financial advisor to navigate the intersection of state-specific firearm regulations and their fiduciary duty to a client. The advisor must understand that while a client's personal choices outside of financial matters are generally their own, there are specific legal and ethical boundaries when those choices directly impact the advisor's ability to fulfill their professional obligations, or when the advisor is asked to facilitate or endorse such choices. The advisor's role is to provide sound financial advice, not to act as a guarantor or facilitator of potentially restricted activities. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves clearly and politely declining to provide a recommendation or endorsement for a non-resident concealed firearm permit application. This approach is correct because it upholds the advisor's professional boundaries and avoids misrepresenting their expertise or authority. Utah law, specifically Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, governs concealed firearm permits. While the law outlines eligibility requirements for both residents and non-residents, it does not mandate or involve financial advisors in the application process. A financial advisor's professional license and ethical obligations, governed by FINRA rules and SEC regulations, if applicable, require them to act in the client's best interest regarding financial matters and to avoid making statements or recommendations outside their scope of expertise or authority. Endorsing a permit application would constitute acting outside their professional capacity and could potentially lead to regulatory scrutiny if the client later faces issues with their permit due to undisclosed factors, or if the endorsement is perceived as a guarantee. Incorrect approaches analysis. Providing a letter of recommendation for the concealed firearm permit application is professionally unacceptable. This action oversteps the advisor's professional boundaries by venturing into a legal and regulatory domain for which they are not qualified or licensed. It could be interpreted as an endorsement of the client's suitability for a permit, which the advisor cannot legally or ethically vouch for. This could expose the advisor to liability if the client's permit is revoked or if they misuse the firearm. Suggesting the client research the permit requirements themselves without any further engagement is also professionally inadequate. While it directs the client to the correct information source, it fails to address the core of the client's request for assistance or endorsement. A more professional response would be to clearly state the advisor's inability to assist with this specific type of request. Offering to help the client fill out the application form is also professionally unacceptable. This directly involves the advisor in a legal application process for which they have no standing or authority. It blurs the lines between financial advice and legal/regulatory facilitation, potentially leading to the advisor inadvertently providing incorrect information or making representations that could have legal consequences for both the client and the advisor. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the scope of their professional duties and limitations. When faced with a request that falls outside their expertise or professional purview, the first step is to clearly identify the boundaries of their role. Next, they should assess whether fulfilling the request could create a conflict of interest, expose them to undue liability, or violate any regulatory or ethical codes. If the request is outside their scope, The professional and ethical course of action is to politely and clearly decline, explaining that the matter falls outside their professional capacity, and, where appropriate, suggest seeking assistance from a qualified professional in that specific field. Question 2. The risk matrix shows an applicant for a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit has a documented history of a domestic disturbance call to their previous out-of-state residence, though no charges were filed and no conviction resulted. The applicant has otherwise met all standard application requirements. Considering the specific regulatory framework governing non-resident concealed firearm permits in Utah, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate professional response? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation, cross-referencing any available public records for further information regarding the domestic disturbance incident, and assess its potential relevance against Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, to determine if it constitutes a disqualifying factor under the law. Option B. Forward the application to a supervisor for a decision, as the presence of a domestic disturbance call, even without a conviction, creates a situation too complex for the initial reviewer to handle. Option C. Deny the permit application based on the domestic disturbance incident, as such behavior inherently demonstrates poor judgment and a propensity for violence, regardless of formal charges. Option D. Immediately approve the permit application, as the absence of a criminal conviction means the applicant meets all statutory requirements for a non-resident concealed firearm permit in Utah. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation, cross-referencing any available public records for further information regarding the domestic disturbance incident, and assess its potential relevance against Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, to determine if it constitutes a disqualifying factor under the law. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a careful balancing of an individual's right to self-defense, as recognized by Utah law, with the strict requirements for obtaining and maintaining a non-resident concealed firearm permit. The applicant's past behavior, even if not resulting in a conviction, raises concerns about their judgment and suitability to carry a concealed firearm in Utah. A thorough and objective review of all submitted documentation, coupled with an understanding of Utah's specific statutory requirements for non-resident permits, is paramount. The best approach involves a meticulous examination of the applicant's submitted application and supporting documents against the explicit criteria outlined in Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, specifically concerning the requirements for a non-resident concealed firearm permit. This includes verifying the applicant's eligibility, ensuring they meet the age and residency requirements as applicable to non-residents, and critically assessing any information that might indicate a disqualifying factor, such as a history of domestic violence or a mental health adjudication, even if not a formal conviction. The Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, BCI, is mandated to deny permits to individuals who do not meet these statutory qualifications. Therefore, a thorough, fact-based review that adheres strictly to the legal framework is the only professionally sound and legally compliant method. An approach that overlooks or downplays the significance of past behavioral issues, even without a conviction, is professionally unacceptable. Utah law requires the BCI to consider factors that demonstrate an applicant's propensity for violence or poor judgment, which can be inferred from certain past incidents. Failing to investigate or adequately consider such information, or assuming that the absence of a conviction automatically equates to eligibility, violates the spirit and intent of the concealed firearm permit laws designed to protect public safety. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to rely on assumptions or personal opinions about the applicant's character rather than objective evidence and legal criteria. The decision to grant or deny a permit must be based on whether the applicant meets the specific statutory qualifications, not on subjective interpretations of their past or perceived trustworthiness. This can lead to arbitrary decisions that are not defensible under Utah law. Finally, an approach that prioritizes expediency over thoroughness is also problematic. The process of reviewing permit applications requires diligence and attention to detail. Rushing through the review, or failing to request clarification or additional documentation when necessary, increases the risk of making an incorrect determination, potentially issuing a permit to an unsuitable individual or wrongly denying a qualified applicant. Professionals in this role should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the relevant Utah statutes and administrative rules. This involves a detailed review of the application and all supporting documents, cross-referencing information with available databases, and applying the legal criteria objectively. When ambiguities or potential disqualifying factors arise, the professional should follow established procedures for further investigation or consultation, ensuring that the final decision is well documented and legally sound. Question 3. Compliance review shows that a financial advisor, licensed in California, is approached by a client who is a California resident, but is seeking information on how to obtain a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. The client asks the advisor for guidance on the application process and any specific requirements they need to be aware of. What is the most appropriate course of action for the financial advisor? Option A. Offer to help the client gather necessary documentation for the permit application, assuming that financial records might be a component of the process. Option B. Inform the client that obtaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit falls outside the scope of financial advisory services, and that the firm cannot provide guidance on firearm regulations or legal processes in other states, suggesting the client consult official Utah state resources or a qualified legal professional. Option C. Agree to research the requirements for the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit and provide the client with a summary of the information found, as a courtesy. Option D. Advise the client that while they cannot directly assist, they believe the process is generally straightforward and suggest the client simply visit the Utah Department of Public Safety website for details. Correct answer is B. Inform the client that obtaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit falls outside the scope of financial advisory services, and that the firm cannot provide guidance on firearm regulations or legal processes in other states, suggesting the client consult official Utah state resources or a qualified legal professional. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a financial advisor to navigate the intersection of state-specific firearm regulations and their fiduciary duty to a client. The advisor must understand that while a client's personal choices outside of the advisor's direct scope of business are generally their own, there are ethical and potentially regulatory boundaries when those choices involve activities that could impact their financial well-being, or involve the advisor in facilitating or condoning potentially illegal activities. The advisor's role is to provide sound financial advice, not to act as an enforcer of firearm laws, but they must also avoid actions that could be construed as aiding or abetting illegal conduct or violating their own professional standards. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a direct, non-judgmental, and informative approach. The advisor should clearly state that they cannot provide advice or assistance related to obtaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, because it falls outside their professional expertise and scope of services. Furthermore, they should explain that their firm's policies and potentially ethical guidelines for financial advisors prohibit them from offering guidance on matters related to firearms, especially when it involves legal compliance in a jurisdiction where they are not licensed or knowledgeable. This approach upholds the advisor's professional boundaries, avoids misrepresentation of their services, and steers clear of potential legal or ethical entanglements by not offering advice they are unqualified to give. It prioritizes client safety and regulatory compliance by directing the client to appropriate resources. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves agreeing to provide general advice on the process of obtaining the permit, even without specific legal expertise. This is professionally unacceptable because it constitutes practicing outside one's scope of competence and could lead to the client receiving inaccurate or incomplete information, potentially resulting in legal repercussions for the client. It also exposes the advisor to liability for providing unqualified advice. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the client's request outright without explanation, implying judgment or disapproval. While the advisor is not obligated to assist, a complete lack of professional courtesy or explanation can damage the client relationship and reflect poorly on the advisor's professionalism. It fails to educate the client on the advisor's limitations. A third incorrect approach is to offer to look into the requirements without clearly defining the limits of that research. This can create a false expectation that the advisor will be able to provide comprehensive guidance, leading to the same issues as providing unqualified advice. It blurs the lines of professional responsibility and can inadvertently lead the advisor down a path of providing advice they are not equipped to deliver. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes clarity, competence, and ethical conduct. When faced with a request outside their expertise or scope of practice, the first step is to clearly identify the boundary. The next step is to communicate this boundary to the client in a professional and non-judgmental manner, explaining the limitations of their services. If appropriate and feasible, professionals should then direct the client to qualified resources or professionals who can assist them. This ensures that the client receives accurate information and that the professional maintains their integrity and avoids potential liabilities. Question 4. Process analysis reveals that a Utah resident holding a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit plans to travel to Colorado for an extended visit. This individual wishes to carry their concealed firearm while in Colorado. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action to ensure they can legally carry their firearm in Colorado? Option A. Rely on general advice from online forums and other firearm owners who have carried in Colorado with out-of-state permits to understand the applicable laws. Option B. Verify Colorado's specific laws regarding the recognition of Utah non-resident concealed firearm permits and any additional carrying restrictions or prohibitions that apply to out-of-state permit holders in Colorado, in addition to confirming the validity of their Utah permit. Option C. Focus solely on ensuring their Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is up to date and has not expired, as this is the primary document required for concealed carry. Option D. Assume that because Utah has a reciprocity agreement with Colorado, their Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is fully recognized and grants them all the same rights and privileges as a Colorado-issued permit holder. The correct answer is B. Verify Colorado's specific laws regarding the recognition of Utah non-resident concealed firearm permits and any additional carrying restrictions or prohibitions that apply to out-of-state permit holders in Colorado, in addition to confirming the validity of their Utah permit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah resident seeking to carry a concealed firearm in a neighboring state, specifically Colorado, which has reciprocity agreements with Utah. The core difficulty lies in understanding and adhering to the specific legal requirements and nuances of both Utah's non-resident permit issuance and Colorado's recognition of out-of-state permits. Misinterpreting these regulations can lead to serious legal consequences, including potential arrest and prosecution for unlawful carrying of a firearm. Careful judgment is required to navigate the differing legal landscapes and ensure full compliance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively researching and understanding the specific firearm permit laws of the destination state, Colorado, in addition to ensuring the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is valid and recognized. This approach prioritizes direct engagement with the laws of the jurisdiction where the permit will be exercised. Specifically, it requires verifying Colorado's reciprocity laws regarding Utah permits, understanding any specific restrictions or requirements Colorado may impose on out-of-state permit holders, e.g., magazine capacity limits, prohibited locations, and confirming the validity and expiration date of the Utah permit. This is correct because Utah's non-resident concealed firearm permit grants the holder the right to carry concealed in Utah and in states with which Utah has reciprocity agreements. However, the permit holder is ultimately responsible for knowing and abiding by the laws of any state they are in, including any additional restrictions or requirements imposed by that state, even if their Utah permit is recognized. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that because Utah has a reciprocity agreement with Colorado, the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants all the same privileges and is subject to the same restrictions as a Colorado-issued permit. This is a regulatory failure because reciprocity agreements typically mean that one state will recognize the permit issued by the other, but it does not necessarily mean that the laws of the issuing state are superseded by the laws of the recognizing state. The permit holder remains bound by the laws of the state they are visiting. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on general knowledge or anecdotal information from other permit holders about firearm laws in Colorado. This is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it bypasses the official and authoritative sources of legal information, potentially leading to a misunderstanding of critical legal requirements and prohibitions. A further incorrect approach is to only check the expiration date of the Utah permit, without verifying Colorado's specific acceptance of Utah permits for non-residents or any additional Colorado-specific carrying restrictions. This is a regulatory failure because the validity of the Utah permit is only one part of the equation. The other crucial part is whether Colorado actively recognizes that specific permit for non-residents and under what conditions. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should adopt a systematic approach. First, identify the issuing jurisdiction, Utah, and the destination jurisdiction, Colorado. Second, consult the official websites of the relevant law enforcement agencies or state government bodies in both jurisdictions for the most current and accurate information on concealed carry laws and reciprocity. For Utah, this would involve understanding the terms and limitations of their non-resident concealed firearm permit. For Colorado, this would involve researching their laws on recognizing out-of-state permits, including any specific requirements or prohibitions for non-residents. Third, if any ambiguities or uncertainties remain, seek clarification from the issuing authority in Utah or the relevant law enforcement agency in Colorado. Prioritize official sources over informal advice. Question 5. The efficiency study reveals a potential lack of clarity for out-of-state residents regarding the specific legal prerequisites for carrying a concealed firearm within Utah. Considering the Utah Department of Public Safety's role in upholding state firearm laws, what is the most effective and legally sound strategy to address this identified information gap? Option A. Advise non-residents to assume their home state's concealed carry permit is valid in Utah due to reciprocity, without verifying the specific terms and current status of any applicable agreements. Option B. Enhance general firearm safety education materials for all individuals, emphasizing responsible gun ownership without specifically detailing the nuances of non-resident permit acquisition in Utah. Option C. Proactively update and disseminate clear, legally accurate information detailing Utah's specific non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements, referencing relevant sections of Utah Code, and providing a direct link to the application process. Option D. Redirect all inquiries from non-residents seeking information on concealed carry permits to a general federal firearms regulation website. The correct answer is C. Proactively update and disseminate clear, legally accurate information detailing Utah's specific non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements, referencing relevant sections of Utah Code, and providing a direct link to the application process. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential gap in the Utah Department of Public Safety's outreach regarding non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the department's duty to inform the public with the need to ensure accurate and legally compliant information dissemination. Misinformation could lead to individuals unknowingly violating Utah law, facing legal repercussions, or believing they are legally permitted to carry when they are not. Careful judgment is required to provide clear, actionable guidance that adheres strictly to Utah Code. The most appropriate approach involves proactively updating and disseminating clear, legally accurate information about Utah's non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements, specifically referencing the relevant sections of Utah Code. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the identified efficiency gap by providing the public with the precise legal framework governing non-resident permits. It ensures that individuals seeking to carry concealed firearms in Utah are fully informed of the statutory requirements, thereby promoting public safety and legal compliance. This aligns with the department's responsibility to uphold and inform the public about the laws it enforces. An approach that focuses solely on general firearm safety without detailing specific permit requirements for non-residents is insufficient. While firearm safety is important, it does not address the core legal obligation for non-residents to obtain a permit to carry concealed in Utah. This fails to provide the necessary legal guidance and could lead to a misunderstanding of permit requirements. Another inappropriate approach would be to direct all inquiries to a generic federal firearms website. Utah law governs concealed firearm permits within the state. While federal laws exist, they do not supersede or fully encompass the specific requirements for carrying concealed firearms within Utah for non-residents. Relying on a federal resource would not provide the specific information mandated by Utah code. Finally, an approach that suggests non-residents can rely on reciprocity agreements without verifying the current status and specific terms of those agreements is also problematic. Reciprocity is a complex issue, and the terms can change. A non-resident must understand Utah's direct requirements for obtaining a permit if they do not meet the specific criteria for an exception, or if reciprocity is not fully established or applicable to their situation. Professional decision-making process for such situations should involve 1. Identifying the specific legal and regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction, Utah Code. 2. Assessing the information needs of the target audience, non-residents seeking permits. 3. Developing communication strategies that are clear, accurate, and directly address the legal framework. 4. Ensuring all disseminated information is current and compliant with the governing statutes. 5. Providing avenues for individuals to seek further clarification directly from the relevant state authority. Question 6. What factors determine the legality of carrying a concealed firearm in Arizona with a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit? Option A. The assumption that all states honor concealed firearm permits from other states without exception. Option B. The specific reciprocity agreements between Utah and Arizona, and any Arizona state laws or local ordinances that may further restrict or define concealed carry for non-residents. Option C. The advice received from online forums discussing firearm reciprocity. Option D. The belief that open carry is always permissible if concealed carry is restricted. The correct answer is B. The specific reciprocity agreements between Utah and Arizona, and any Arizona state laws or local ordinances that may further restrict or define concealed carry for non-residents. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a permit holder to navigate the complexities of interstate firearm laws, specifically concerning reciprocity, and the nuances of carrying a concealed firearm in a state where their Utah permit may not be fully recognized or where specific local ordinances might apply. The challenge lies in ensuring compliance with Utah's permit requirements while also respecting the laws of the destination state, which can differ significantly. A failure to do so can lead to severe legal consequences, including arrest and prosecution. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively researching and understanding the firearm laws of the destination state, particularly regarding concealed carry reciprocity with Utah. This approach prioritizes compliance and safety by ensuring the permit holder is aware of any limitations, additional requirements, or outright prohibitions on carrying a concealed firearm in that specific jurisdiction, even with a valid Utah permit. This aligns with the ethical responsibility of a permit holder to be informed and to carry firearms in a manner that respects all applicable laws. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states without further inquiry. This fails to acknowledge that reciprocity agreements are not universal and can be subject to change or specific restrictions. This approach risks violating the laws of the destination state. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on informal advice from other individuals or outdated information found online regarding reciprocity. While anecdotal evidence can be a starting point, it is not a substitute for official legal guidance. This can lead to misinterpretations of the law and potential noncompliance. A further incorrect approach is to carry the firearm openly instead of concealed, believing this bypasses concealed carry regulations. Many states have separate laws governing open carry, and assuming it is permissible without verification is a significant legal risk. This approach ignores the specific regulations of the destination state regarding firearm display. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and diligent approach to interstate firearm travel. This involves 1. Identifying the destination state S. 2. Consulting official government resources, e.g., State Attorney General's Office, state police websites, for the most current and accurate information on firearm laws and reciprocity. 3. Understanding the specific terms of any reciprocity agreements, including any limitations or restrictions. 4. Being prepared to adjust carrying practices based on the laws of the destination state, which may include not carrying a firearm at all if prohibited. Question 7. Compliance review shows a student attending a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit course possesses a valid concealed firearm permit issued by another state. The student inquires if their current out-of-state permit is sufficient for them to carry concealed in Utah without needing a Utah permit. What is the most appropriate course of action for the instructor to take? Option A. Advise the student to verify Utah's current reciprocity agreement with their home state and confirm if they meet all other Utah non-resident permit eligibility requirements. Option B. Advise the student to rely on their out-of-state permit and assume it is valid for concealed carry in Utah without any further checks. Option C. Inform the student that any valid concealed firearm permit from another state is automatically recognized for carrying concealed in Utah. Option D. Tell the student that they must obtain a Utah concealed firearm permit regardless of their out-of-state permit status. The correct answer is A. Advise the student to verify Utah's current reciprocity agreement with their home state and confirm if they meet all other Utah non-resident permit eligibility requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah concealed firearm permit instructor due to the potential conflict between a student's out-of-state permit and Utah's specific reciprocity requirements for non-resident permits. The instructor must navigate the nuances of Utah law regarding the recognition of permits from other states, ensuring compliance while also providing accurate instruction. The challenge lies in correctly interpreting and applying Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, Concealed Firearm Permit Act, concerning non-resident permits and reciprocity agreements. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves verifying the specific terms of Utah's reciprocity agreements with the student's home state. This aligns with Utah Code 53-5-705, which addresses reciprocity and the recognition of permits issued by other states. The instructor must confirm that the student's home state permit is currently recognized by Utah for the purpose of carrying concealed in Utah, and that the student meets all other Utah non-resident permit requirements if they are seeking a Utah permit. This approach prioritizes accurate legal interpretation and adherence to state statutes, ensuring the student receives correct information and that the instructor avoids facilitating any potential violations of Utah law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume that because the student possesses a valid permit from another state, it automatically grants them the right to carry concealed in Utah under Utah's non-resident provisions, without further verification. This fails to acknowledge that Utah's recognition of out-of-state permits is governed by specific reciprocity agreements and statutory conditions, as outlined in Utah Code 53-5-705. Simply accepting the out-of-state permit at face value, without confirming its validity under Utah law, could lead to the student unknowingly violating Utah's concealed firearm laws. Another incorrect approach would be to advise the student that their out-of-state permit is sufficient for carrying concealed in Utah, without confirming if Utah has a reciprocity agreement with that specific state, or if the student meets all other Utah non-resident permit eligibility criteria. This bypasses the statutory requirement for reciprocity and could result in the student carrying illegally in Utah and the instructor providing negligent advice. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately deny the student any possibility of carrying concealed in Utah based solely on their out-of-state permit, without investigating Utah's reciprocity status with their home state. This is overly restrictive and fails to consider the provisions for recognizing valid permits from reciprocal states as permitted by Utah law. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a proactive and legally informed approach. When faced with situations involving out-of-state permits and Utah's concealed firearm laws, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the relevant Utah statutes and administrative rules governing concealed firearm permits, particularly those pertaining to non-residents and reciprocity. 2. Consulting official resources, such as the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification or the Utah Department of Public Safety, to confirm current reciprocity agreements and any specific requirements for non-residents. 3. Clearly communicating the findings to the student, explaining both the rights and responsibilities under Utah law. 4. Documenting the advice provided to ensure accountability and to serve as a reference. This systematic approach ensures compliance, protects both the student and the instructor, and upholds the integrity of the permitting process. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates that a Utah-licensed concealed firearm permit instructor is also a licensed real estate agent. During a concealed firearm permit course, the instructor is considering how to leverage their dual professional roles. Which of the following approaches best adheres to regulatory compliance and professional ethics in Utah? Option A. Allow permit applicants to discuss their real estate needs with the instructor during the course, with the understanding that the instructor will follow up with them after the permit is issued. Option B. Maintain a strict separation between the firearms instruction and real estate agent roles, focusing solely on providing the required concealed firearm permit training and refraining from any real estate solicitations or discussions during the course. Option C. Actively solicit real estate business from all concealed firearm permit applicants during breaks in the training course, offering them exclusive discounts on real estate services. Option D. Inform permit applicants that successful completion of the course will qualify them for a special referral bonus on real estate transactions handled by the instructor. Correct answer is B. Maintain a strict separation between the firearms instruction and real estate agent roles, focusing solely on providing the required concealed firearm permit training and refraining from any real estate solicitations or discussions during the course. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah concealed firearm permit instructor who is also a licensed real estate agent. The challenge lies in navigating potential conflicts of interest and ensuring compliance with both Utah firearms permit regulations and real estate licensing laws. The instructor must maintain professional boundaries and avoid any actions that could be perceived as coercive or exploitative, particularly when dealing with individuals seeking a permit who might also be potential real estate clients. Upholding the integrity of the permit process and the real estate profession requires strict adherence to ethical guidelines and regulatory frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves maintaining a clear separation between the roles of firearms instructor and real estate agent. This means refraining from soliciting real estate business from permit applicants during or immediately after the concealed firearm permit course. The instructor should focus solely on providing the required firearm safety training and ensuring all applicants meet the Utah statutory requirements for obtaining a permit. This approach aligns with the spirit and letter of Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, Concealed Firearm Permit Act, which emphasizes the applicant's qualifications and the instructor's role in verifying competency and knowledge of firearm laws. It also adheres to the ethical obligations of a real estate licensee under Utah Code Title 61, Chapter 2F, Real Estate Licensing and Practice Act, which mandates honesty, integrity, and avoiding misrepresentation or unfair dealing. By keeping these roles distinct, the instructor avoids any appearance of impropriety or undue influence, thereby protecting both the permit process and their real estate license. Incorrect approaches analysis. Soliciting real estate business from permit applicants during the concealed firearm permit course is professionally unacceptable. This action creates a direct conflict of interest, potentially pressuring individuals who are focused on obtaining their permit into engaging in real estate transactions. It undermines the integrity of the firearms training by introducing a commercial agenda, and it violates the ethical duty of a real estate agent to act in the best interest of their clients without undue influence. This behavior could be seen as exploiting the applicant's situation and could lead to disciplinary action from both the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, which oversees concealed firearm permits, and the Utah Division of Real Estate. Offering a discount on real estate services to individuals who successfully obtain their concealed firearm permit is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly a promotional offer, it links the successful completion of a regulated permit process to a real estate transaction. This creates an incentive structure that could compromise the instructor's objectivity in assessing permit applicants and could be perceived as a form of quid pro quo, which is unethical and potentially violates regulations concerning fair dealing in both real estate and firearms permit contexts. It blurs the lines between the two professions in a way that is not compliant with the spirit of regulatory oversight. Allowing permit applicants to discuss their real estate needs with the instructor during breaks in the concealed firearm permit course, with the understanding that future business will be discussed, is also professionally problematic. While less direct than outright solicitation, it still introduces a commercial element into a regulated training environment. It can distract applicants from the critical safety information being presented and creates an expectation of future business that can influence the instructor's interactions with the applicant. This approach fails to maintain the necessary professional distance and could lead to perceptions of favoritism or undue influence, compromising the impartiality required for both roles. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance, ethical conduct, and the protection of the public interest. This involves clearly identifying potential conflicts of interest arising from dual professional roles. When such conflicts exist, the professional must implement strict protocols to maintain separation and impartiality. This includes understanding the specific requirements and ethical guidelines of each profession, and ensuring that actions taken in one capacity do not negatively impact or compromise the integrity of the other. Transparency and a commitment to serving the client's primary needs within each professional context are paramount. Question 9. Market research demonstrates that a Utah resident who has obtained a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is planning a road trip through several neighboring states. Which of the following actions represents the most prudent and legally compliant approach to ensure they can legally carry their concealed firearm throughout their journey? Option A. Proactively research the specific concealed firearm permit laws and reciprocity agreements of each destination state before traveling, consulting official state law enforcement or Department of Public Safety websites for current information. Option B. Rely on advice from fellow travelers or online forums to determine which states recognize Utah's non-resident permit. Option C. Assume that the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit will be automatically recognized in all neighboring states due to Utah's permit status. Option D. Focus solely on understanding Utah's requirements for issuing the non-resident permit, believing this is sufficient for carrying in other states. The correct answer is A. Proactively research the specific concealed firearm permit laws and reciprocity agreements of each destination state before traveling, consulting official state law enforcement or Department of Public Safety websites for current information. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah resident seeking to carry a concealed firearm in a neighboring state. The core difficulty lies in navigating the reciprocity agreements between Utah and other states, which are subject to frequent changes and vary significantly in their requirements. A failure to understand these nuances can lead to unintentional violations of firearm laws, resulting in severe legal consequences, including arrest, fines, and potential imprisonment. Professional judgment requires meticulous research into the specific laws of the destination state and a thorough understanding of Utah's permit requirements for non-residents. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively researching the specific concealed firearm permit laws and reciprocity agreements of the destination state before traveling. This means consulting the official website of that state's law enforcement agency or Department of Public Safety for the most current information on permit recognition, any specific restrictions, or additional requirements for non-resident permit holders. This approach ensures compliance with the laws of the state where the firearm will be carried, which is the paramount legal obligation. Utah's non-resident permit is a recognition of Utah's standards, but the carrying state's laws ultimately govern the act of carrying. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that because Utah has a non-resident concealed firearm permit, it will be automatically recognized in all other states. This assumption ignores the fundamental principle of interstate reciprocity, which is based on mutual agreements and can be revoked or modified by any state. Relying on this assumption could lead to carrying a concealed firearm in a state that does not recognize Utah permits, thereby violating that state's laws. Another incorrect approach is to only consider Utah's requirements for obtaining a non-resident permit and not investigate the laws of the state where the permit will be used. While obtaining the Utah permit is a necessary first step for a non-resident, it does not grant the right to carry a concealed firearm in any state without verifying that state's acceptance of the permit. This oversight can result in legal jeopardy in the destination state. A further incorrect approach is to rely on informal advice from friends or online forums regarding reciprocity. While these sources may offer anecdotal information, They are not authoritative and can be outdated or inaccurate. Legal requirements for firearm possession are strict, and relying on unofficial guidance is a significant professional and legal risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should adopt a systematic approach. First, identify the specific destination state, S. Second, consult the official government resources of those states to understand their firearm laws, particularly concerning concealed carry by non-residents and their recognition of out-of-state permits. Third, cross-reference this information with Utah's requirements for issuing non-resident permits to ensure all prerequisites are met. Finally, always err on the side of caution and seek clarification from official sources if any doubt exists. Question 10. Operational review demonstrates a client is considering obtaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit and requires a financial projection of the total cost over a 5-year period. The current fees are initial application fee of $51, 00, fingerprinting fee of $10, 00, and the renewal fee due in 5 years of $41, 00. Assuming a conservative annual discount rate of 3%, what is the present value of the total cost to obtain and maintain this permit for the initial 5-year term? Option A, $93, 00. Option B, $97, 18. Option C, $95, 00. Option D, $102, 00. The correct answer is B, $97, 18. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a financial professional to navigate the complexities of non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements in Utah, specifically concerning the financial implications of obtaining and maintaining such a permit. The challenge lies in accurately calculating the total cost over a specified period, considering potential fee changes and the time value of money, while adhering strictly to Utah's regulatory framework for non-resident permits. Miscalculation could lead to financial misrepresentation or an inaccurate assessment of the permit's true cost for the client. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves calculating the total cost of obtaining and maintaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit over a 5-year period, factoring in the initial application fee, the fingerprinting fee, and the renewal fee, while also accounting for the time value of money using a reasonable discount rate. This approach is correct because it provides a comprehensive and financially accurate picture of the permit's cost to the client. Utah Code Section 53-5-704 outlines the fees associated with the permit, and understanding the renewal cycle every 5 years is crucial for long-term financial planning. Incorporating a discount rate, such as 3% annually, reflects the principle of present value, acknowledging that future expenses are worth less today. The calculation would be initial application fee plus fingerprinting fee plus present value of renewal fee. Present value of renewal fee equals renewal fee / 1 plus discount rate / text number of years until renewal /. In this case, assuming a 5-year permit cycle, the renewal fee would be discounted back 5 years. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that simply sums the initial application fee, fingerprinting fee, and the future renewal fee without discounting it is incorrect. This fails to account for the time value of money, overstating the present cost of the permit, and potentially misleading the client about the actual financial outlay required over the permit's lifespan. It ignores a fundamental financial principle relevant to long-term cost assessment. An approach that only calculates the initial application and fingerprinting fees, ignoring the renewal fee altogether, is also incorrect. This provides an incomplete financial picture, as the permit requires periodic renewal, incurring further costs. It fails to meet the professional obligation of providing a full and accurate cost assessment for the duration of the permit's validity. An approach that uses an arbitrarily high discount rate, such as 10%, without justification, is problematic. While discounting is appropriate, an excessive rate can artificially deflate the present value of future costs, making the permit appear less expensive than it realistically is. The chosen discount rate should be reasonable and defensible, reflecting market conditions or a client's specific financial context, not an arbitrary figure designed to present a lower cost. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this scenario by first identifying all relevant fees and the permit's renewal cycle as stipulated by Utah law. They must then apply sound financial principles, such as the time value of money, to accurately project the total cost over the permit's lifespan. This involves selecting a reasonable discount rate and performing the necessary present value calculations. Transparency with the client regarding all assumptions, including the discount rate, is paramount. Question 11. System analysis indicates a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit holder is planning a road trip that will take them through several other states. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action regarding carrying their concealed firearm during this trip? Option A. Rely on general advice and personal experiences shared by other permit holders in online forums to determine where and how the firearm can be carried. Option B. Proactively research the specific concealed firearm laws and reciprocity agreements of each state on the travel itinerary, consulting official government sources for accurate and up-to-date information. Option C. Assume that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized in all other states, allowing for concealed carry without further investigation. Option D. Carry the firearm openly, as this is generally less regulated than concealed carry and bypasses the need to understand specific concealed carry reciprocity. The correct answer is B. Proactively research the specific concealed firearm laws and reciprocity agreements of each state on the travel itinerary, consulting official government sources for accurate and up-to-date information. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a permit holder to navigate the complexities of interstate firearm laws, specifically concerning reciprocity and the nuances of carrying a concealed firearm in a state where their Utah permit may not be fully recognized or where additional requirements exist. Misunderstanding these regulations can lead to serious legal consequences, including arrest and prosecution, even if the individual believes they are acting lawfully based on their Utah permit. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the laws of the state where the firearm is being carried. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively researching and understanding the specific concealed firearm laws of any state the permit holder intends to travel to or through. This includes verifying if Utah's concealed firearm permit is recognized, reciprocity, and if so, under what conditions. It also necessitates understanding any additional requirements or restrictions imposed by the destination state, such as specific signage laws, prohibited locations, or the need for a permit from that state if reciprocity is limited or non-existent. This approach ensures the permit holder is fully informed and compliant with the laws of the jurisdiction they are physically present in, thereby avoiding potential legal entanglements. This is correct because Utah Code Section 76-10-529 addresses reciprocity and requires permit holders to comply with the laws of the jurisdiction where they are carrying. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is assuming that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge the principle of state sovereignty in regulating firearms and the specific reciprocity agreements, or lack thereof, that exist between Utah and other states. This approach risks violating the laws of the destination state, as Utah permit holders are still bound by the laws of the state they are visiting. Another incorrect approach is relying solely on general online forums or anecdotal advice from other permit holders regarding reciprocity. While these sources might offer some information, they are not authoritative and can be outdated or inaccurate. Laws change, and specific interpretations can vary. This approach lacks the due diligence required to consult official sources, such as the Attorney General's office or state police of the destination state, which are the definitive authorities on their firearm laws. A third incorrect approach is to carry the firearm openly instead of concealed, believing this bypasses concealed carry regulations. While some states may have different laws for open versus concealed carry, it is crucial to understand that open carry may also be regulated and may not be permitted in all locations or under all circumstances. Furthermore, this approach does not address the core issue of understanding the legal framework for carrying a firearm in the destination state, and could still lead to legal issues if open carry is also restricted or if the individual is unaware of other applicable laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals in possession of a concealed firearm permit should adopt a proactive and diligent approach to interstate travel. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all states the individual plans to travel through or to. 2. For each identified state, consulting official government websites, e.g., State Attorney General, State Police, to determine the current reciprocity status with Utah's concealed firearm permit. 3. Thoroughly reviewing the specific laws of the destination state regarding carrying firearms, including any restrictions on prohibited places, signage requirements, and differences between concealed and open carry. 4. If reciprocity is not fully recognized, or if additional requirements exist, obtaining the necessary permits or complying with all stipulated conditions before carrying a firearm in that state. This systematic approach prioritizes legal compliance and personal safety. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates that a Utah concealed firearm permit instructor is assisting an applicant who holds a valid concealed firearm permit from another state. The applicant wishes to use this out-of-state permit as a basis for obtaining a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the instructor to take in Utah? Option A. Assume the out-of-state permit is automatically recognized by Utah and proceed with the application process based on that assumption. Option B. Refuse to acknowledge the out-of-state permit and inform the applicant that only Utah-issued permits are considered. Option C. Contact the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, BCI, to verify the validity and reciprocity status of the applicant's out-of-state permit with Utah law. Option D. Rely solely on the applicant's verbal confirmation that their out-of-state permit is valid and recognized by Utah. The correct answer is C. Contact the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, BCI, to verify the validity and reciprocity status of the applicant's out-of-state permit with Utah law. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah concealed firearm permit instructor because it involves navigating the intersection of state-specific firearm regulations, the applicant's out-of-state permit, and the instructor's ethical and legal obligations. The instructor must ensure compliance with Utah law regarding reciprocity and the validity of permits issued by other states, while also upholding professional standards and avoiding actions that could inadvertently facilitate illegal firearm possession or violate the spirit of the law. The challenge lies in accurately interpreting and applying Utah's specific reciprocity statutes to a situation involving a permit from a state with potentially different requirements. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice is to verify the validity and reciprocity status of the applicant's out-of-state permit with the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, BCI. This approach directly addresses the core regulatory requirement for recognizing out-of-state permits. Utah Code Section 53-5-704 outlines the conditions under which Utah recognizes concealed firearm permits issued by other states. This statute requires that the issuing state's laws be substantially similar to Utah's, and that the issuing state has a system for identifying individuals prohibited from possessing firearms. By contacting the BCI, the instructor ensures they are acting on the most current and authoritative interpretation of Utah's reciprocity laws, thereby guaranteeing compliance and preventing potential legal ramifications for both the instructor and the applicant. This proactive verification is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the permit process. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that because the applicant possesses a valid permit from another state, it is automatically recognized by Utah for the purpose of obtaining a Utah permit. This fails to acknowledge Utah's specific reciprocity requirements, which are not universal and depend on the issuing state's laws and the BCI's determination of substantial similarity. This assumption could lead to the instructor providing inaccurate advice or facilitating an application process based on a misunderstanding of Utah law, potentially resulting in the applicant being denied a Utah permit or facing legal issues. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the applicant's verbal assurance that their out-of-state permit is valid and recognized. While the applicant may genuinely believe this, their understanding of reciprocity laws may be incomplete or outdated. The instructor has a professional responsibility to ensure the accuracy of information provided and to adhere to official regulatory channels. This approach bypasses the necessary verification step and places undue trust in an unconfirmed source, risking noncompliance with Utah code. A third incorrect approach is to refuse to acknowledge the out-of-state permit entirely without any attempt to verify its status or Utah's reciprocity. While caution is warranted, Outright dismissal without due diligence is unprofessional and potentially discriminatory if the applicant's permit is, in fact, recognized under Utah law. This approach fails to uphold the principle of reciprocity as outlined in Utah statutes and may hinder individuals who are legally permitted to carry firearms in Utah. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a systematic approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the specific jurisdiction's laws and regulations governing the situation, in this case, Utah concealed firearm permit laws. 2. Understanding the core requirements of those regulations, particularly concerning reciprocity for out-of-state permits. 3. Proactively seeking authoritative clarification from the relevant regulatory body, Utah BCI, when faced with ambiguity or situations involving out-of-state permits. 4. Documenting all verification steps and communications with regulatory agencies. This methodical process ensures that decisions are grounded in legal requirements and ethical practice, minimizing risk and upholding professional integrity. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates that a resident of Wyoming has applied for a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, presenting a valid concealed firearm permit issued by the state of Wyoming. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Utah concealed firearm permit instructor to ensure regulatory compliance? Option A. Deny the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit solely because the applicant is not a resident of Utah, regardless of their Wyoming permit status or reciprocity agreements. Option B. Verify that Wyoming has a reciprocity agreement with Utah for concealed firearm permits and confirm the applicant meets all other Utah statutory requirements for permit issuance. Option C. Accept the applicant's Wyoming permit as sufficient proof of qualification and proceed with issuing the Utah permit without further verification of reciprocity. Option D. Issue the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, assuming that a valid permit from another state automatically satisfies Utah's requirements for non-residents. The correct answer is B. Verify that Wyoming has a reciprocity agreement with Utah for concealed firearm permits and confirm the applicant meets all other Utah statutory requirements for permit issuance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah concealed firearm permit instructor because it involves interpreting and applying Utah's specific laws regarding non-resident permits, particularly concerning reciprocity and the nuances of what constitutes a valid permit for carrying in Utah. The instructor must ensure compliance with Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, which governs concealed firearm permits, and understand how it interacts with federal law and the laws of other states. Misinterpreting these regulations could lead to an applicant being improperly denied a permit or, conversely, being issued a permit when they do not meet the statutory requirements, potentially jeopardizing public safety and the instructor's professional standing. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves meticulously verifying the applicant's out-of-state permit against Utah's reciprocity agreements and statutory requirements for non-residents. This means confirming that the applicant's home state has a valid reciprocity agreement with Utah for concealed firearm permits, as outlined in Utah Code Section 53-5-705. The instructor must also ensure the applicant meets all other Utah permit requirements, such as age and residency status. Even if applying as a non-resident, specific criteria apply. This approach prioritizes strict adherence to Utah's legislative framework, ensuring that only individuals legally qualified under Utah law receive a permit. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that any valid concealed firearm permit from another state automatically qualifies an applicant for a Utah non-resident permit. This fails to acknowledge Utah's specific reciprocity laws and the possibility that the applicant's home state may not have an agreement with Utah, or that the applicant's permit may not meet Utah's standards for issuance. This bypasses the statutory requirement for reciprocity verification. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the applicant's assertion that their permit is valid and sufficient for Utah. This neglects the instructor's professional responsibility to independently verify the information and ensure compliance with Utah Code. It places undue trust in the applicant without due diligence, which is a failure of regulatory compliance. A further incorrect approach is to grant the permit based on a general understanding of concealed carry laws without consulting the specific provisions of Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7, and its associated administrative rules. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to understanding and applying the precise legal requirements of the jurisdiction in which the permit is being sought. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a systematic and legally grounded decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the governing statutes and regulations. Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7. When presented with an application, the professional must identify all relevant criteria, including those specific to non-residence and reciprocity. They should then gather all necessary documentation and independently verify each piece of information against the legal requirements. Any ambiguity should be resolved by consulting official legal resources or seeking guidance from the relevant state agency. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are not only legally compliant but also ethically sound, prioritizing public safety and the integrity of the permitting process. Question 14. Benchmark analysis indicates that a Utah resident holding a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is planning a trip to Wyoming. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure lawful concealed firearm carry in Wyoming? Option A. Rely on general online forums and discussions about concealed carry reciprocity to understand Wyoming's stance on Utah permits. Option B. Contact the Utah Department of Public Safety for confirmation on whether their permit is valid for concealed carry in Wyoming. Option C. Assume that the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is universally recognized for concealed carry in all other states. Option D. Proactively research Wyoming's specific laws and reciprocity agreements to determine if Utah's non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized for concealed carry within Wyoming. The correct answer is D. Proactively research Wyoming's specific laws and reciprocity agreements to determine if Utah's non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized for concealed carry within Wyoming. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah resident seeking to carry a concealed firearm in a neighboring state, Wyoming. The core difficulty lies in navigating the reciprocity agreements between states regarding concealed firearm permits. A failure to understand and adhere to these agreements can lead to serious legal consequences, including criminal charges for carrying a concealed weapon without proper authorization. Professionals must exercise meticulous judgment to ensure compliance with the laws of both their home state and any state they intend to carry in. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves proactively researching and understanding Wyoming's specific laws and reciprocity agreements concerning concealed firearm permits for Utah residents. This includes verifying if Utah's non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized in Wyoming, and if so, under what conditions. This approach is correct because it prioritizes direct compliance with the laws of the jurisdiction where the permit holder intends to carry. Utah law, while granting the permit, does not extend its authority beyond Utah's borders without reciprocal agreements. Wyoming law dictates who may carry concealed firearms within its jurisdiction. Therefore, confirming Wyoming's acceptance of Utah permits is the essential first step for lawful concealed carry. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in Wyoming. This is a regulatory failure because it ignores the principle of territorial jurisdiction. A permit issued by one state is only valid in another if a specific reciprocity agreement exists. This assumption could lead to a violation of Wyoming's concealed carry laws. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on general information about concealed carry laws without verifying specific reciprocity agreements. This is an ethical and regulatory failure because it demonstrates a lack of due diligence. General information may be outdated or incomplete, and it does not substitute for the precise legal requirements of the destination state. A third incorrect approach is to contact the Utah Permit Issuing Authority for guidance on carrying in Wyoming. While the Utah Authority can explain the terms of the Utah permit, they are not the ultimate arbiters of Wyoming's laws. This approach is flawed because it seeks information from the wrong jurisdiction regarding the laws of another state, potentially leading to misinformation about Wyoming's requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should adopt a systematic approach. First, identify the relevant jurisdictions, Utah home state and Wyoming destination state. Second, understand the legal instrument in question, the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. Third, determine the governing laws for concealed carry in the destination state, Wyoming. Fourth, research the specific reciprocity agreements between Utah and Wyoming concerning concealed firearm permits. This research should be conducted through official government sources for both states. If reciprocity is confirmed, understand any limitations or specific requirements. If reciprocity is not explicitly stated or is conditional, assume that carrying a concealed firearm is not permitted without obtaining a Wyoming permit or complying with Wyoming's laws for non-residents without a permit. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that a Utah resident has obtained a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. This individual intends to carry a concealed firearm in their home state, which is not Utah. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure compliance with all applicable firearm regulations? Option A. Rely solely on general information about concealed carry reciprocity without confirming the specific details pertaining to the Utah non-resident permit and its interaction with the laws of the permit holder's home state. Option B. Proactively verify the specific requirements and limitations of the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, particularly concerning its recognition and any associated obligations in the permit holder's home state, and confirm adherence to the home state's firearm laws. Option C. Assume that the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states, including their home state, without further investigation. Option D. Believe that the Utah permit supersedes the firearm laws of the permit holder's home state, even if their home state does not recognize Utah permits for non-residents. The correct answer is B. Proactively verify the specific requirements and limitations of the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, particularly concerning its recognition and any associated obligations in the permit holder's home state, and confirm adherence to the home state's firearm laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a permit holder to navigate the complexities of interstate firearm laws, specifically concerning reciprocity and the nuances of carrying a concealed firearm in a state where their home permit is not recognized. The challenge lies in ensuring compliance with Utah's specific requirements for non-resident permits, while also understanding the implications of carrying in other jurisdictions, even if their Utah permit is intended to facilitate that. A failure to accurately assess the reciprocity status of their home state permit with Utah could lead to unintentional violations of firearm laws. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively verifying the specific requirements and limitations of the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit, particularly concerning its recognition and any associated obligations in the permit holder's home state. This approach is correct because Utah law, like many states, has specific provisions for non-resident permits, and understanding these is paramount. Furthermore, responsible firearm ownership necessitates a thorough understanding of the laws of any jurisdiction where a firearm is carried, regardless of reciprocity agreements. This includes confirming that the Utah permit is indeed valid for concealed carry in the permit holder's home state and adhering to any additional requirements that state might impose. This proactive verification ensures compliance with both Utah's permit issuance criteria and the carrying laws of the permit holder's domicile. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that simply possessing a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states, including their home state, without further investigation. This is a significant regulatory failure because reciprocity is not universal and can be subject to specific conditions or limitations. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on general information about concealed carry reciprocity without confirming the specific details pertaining to the Utah non-resident permit and its interaction with the laws of the permit holder's home state. This overlooks the critical need for precise, jurisdiction-specific knowledge. A third incorrect approach is to believe that the Utah permit supersedes the firearm laws of the permit holder's home state, even if their home state does not recognize Utah permits for non-residents. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of jurisdictional authority and the principle that individuals must comply with the laws of the state in which they are physically present. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes due diligence and regulatory adherence. This involves 1. Identifying the core requirement, understanding the specific legal framework governing the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit. 2. Assessing the implications, recognizing that permit validity extends beyond the issuing state and requires understanding reciprocity. 3. Verifying information, actively seeking out official sources for reciprocity status and any associated obligations. 4. Applying knowledge, ensuring that actions taken are in strict accordance with all applicable laws and permit conditions. This systematic approach minimizes the risk of unintentional legal violations and upholds the principles of responsible firearm ownership. Question 16. Strategic planning requires a Utah resident with a non-resident concealed firearm permit to consider their travel plans. If this individual intends to visit Arizona, what is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action regarding carrying a concealed firearm? Option A. Proactively research Arizona's specific concealed firearm permit reciprocity laws to determine if Utah's permit is recognized and under what conditions. Option B. Carry the concealed firearm in Arizona, believing that the Utah permit is sufficient as long as no illegal activity is intended. Option C. Rely on information gathered from online firearm enthusiast forums to understand Arizona's permit recognition policies. Option D. Assume that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized in all other states, including Arizona. The correct answer is A. Proactively research Arizona's specific concealed firearm permit reciprocity laws to determine if Utah's permit is recognized and under what conditions. Explanation. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape to ensure compliance and protect individuals' rights. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah resident seeking to carry a concealed firearm outside of Utah, specifically in a state with different reciprocity laws. The challenge lies in navigating the complex web of interstate firearm permit recognition, which can vary significantly and lead to unintentional violations if not handled with meticulous care. Professional judgment is required to avoid legal repercussions and ensure the individual's actions align with both Utah's permit requirements and the laws of the visited state. The best approach involves proactively researching and understanding the specific concealed firearm permit reciprocity laws of the state the individual intends to visit. This means consulting official government websites of the destination state, such as their Attorney General's office or Department of Public Safety, to determine if Utah's concealed firearm permit is recognized and under what conditions. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal requirements of carrying a concealed firearm in another jurisdiction. Utah law, while granting a permit, does not dictate the laws of other states. Therefore, adherence to the destination state's laws regarding permit recognition is paramount for legal compliance. This proactive research ensures the individual is fully informed and can legally carry a concealed firearm or make informed decisions about not carrying one in the visited state. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a valid Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states. This assumption is flawed because firearm reciprocity is not universal and is determined by individual state laws. Relying solely on the Utah permit without verifying reciprocity in the destination state constitutes a failure to comply with the laws of that state, potentially leading to charges of carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. Another incorrect approach is to only consult online forums or unofficial sources for information on reciprocity. While these sources may offer anecdotal evidence, they are not legally authoritative and can be inaccurate or outdated. Relying on such information can lead to a misunderstanding of the actual legal requirements, resulting in a violation of the destination state's laws. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due diligence in seeking reliable, official information. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to believe that the Utah permit is sufficient as long as the individual does not intend to commit any crimes. While intent is a factor in some legal proceedings, it does not negate the requirement to possess a valid permit or have one recognized in the jurisdiction where a concealed firearm is carried. The act of carrying a concealed firearm without proper authorization, regardless of intent, is a violation of the destination state's laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, identify the core legal requirement, carrying a concealed firearm in another state. Second, recognize the potential for jurisdictional differences, interstate reciprocity. Third, prioritize obtaining information from official, authoritative sources in the relevant jurisdiction. Fourth, Act in accordance with the verified legal requirements, even if it means refraining from carrying a concealed firearm. Question 17. The performance metrics show a backlog in processing non-resident concealed firearm permit applications in Utah. An applicant from a state with a concealed firearm permit law, but without a formal reciprocity agreement with Utah, has submitted a complete application. What is the most appropriate regulatory compliance approach for the Utah issuing authority? Option A. Verify the applicant possesses a valid concealed firearm permit from their state of residence and confirm that their home state's permit requirements are substantially similar to Utah's, in addition to conducting a standard background check. Option B. Issue the permit as the applicant holds a valid permit from their home state, assuming their state's laws are sufficient. Option C. Reject the application solely because there is no formal reciprocity agreement with the applicant's state of residence. Option D. Expedite the application based on the applicant's out-of-state status, assuming they meet general eligibility criteria. Correct answer is A. Verify the applicant possesses a valid concealed firearm permit from their state of residence and confirm that their home state's permit requirements are substantially similar to Utah's, in addition to conducting a standard background check. Explanation. The performance metrics show a concerning trend in the processing of non-resident concealed firearm permit applications in Utah. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficient processing of applications with strict adherence to Utah's specific legal requirements for non-resident permits, ensuring public safety, and maintaining the integrity of the permitting system. Misinterpreting or overlooking any aspect of Utah law can lead to the issuance of permits to individuals who do not meet the criteria, potentially compromising public safety and exposing the issuing authority to legal repercussions. The best approach involves a thorough review of each application against the specific statutory requirements for non-resident concealed firearm permits as outlined in Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7. This includes verifying that the applicant possesses a valid concealed firearm permit from their state of residence, that their state of residence has a reciprocal agreement with Utah, or that their state of residence has permit requirements substantially similar to Utah's. Furthermore, it necessitates a comprehensive background check to ensure the applicant meets all other eligibility criteria, such as age and the absence of disqualifying criminal convictions or mental health adjudications, as defined by Utah law. This meticulous adherence to statutory mandates is crucial for lawful and safe permit issuance. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a valid permit from any other state automatically qualifies an applicant for a Utah non-resident permit. This fails to acknowledge Utah's specific statutory requirements regarding reciprocity or substantial similarity of permit standards in the applicant's home state. Another incorrect approach is to expedite processing based on the applicant's out-of-state residency without a thorough verification of their home state's permit status and its alignment with Utah's legal framework. This bypasses critical due diligence mandated by Utah law. Finally, relying solely on the applicant's self-attestation of eligibility without independent verification of their home state's permit and its compliance with Utah's reciprocity or substantial similarity provisions is a significant regulatory failure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes statutory compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the specific requirements of Utah Code Title 53, Chapter 5, Part 7 for non-resident permits. 2. Establishing a clear verification process for out-of-state permits and home state laws. 3. Conducting thorough background checks as mandated. 4. Documenting all verification steps and decisions. 5. Seeking clarification from legal counsel or supervisory personnel when any ambiguity arises regarding an applicant's eligibility or the interpretation of Utah law. Question 18. Operational review demonstrates that a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit holder is planning a road trip that will take them through Wyoming and into Montana. Which of the following actions best ensures compliance with firearm regulations throughout their journey? Option A. Assuming that the Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit is recognized in all states, including Wyoming and Montana, due to general reciprocity principles. Option B. Relying on the understanding that firearm laws are largely uniform across the United States and that their Utah permit will be sufficient. Option C. Contacting other Utah permit holders who have traveled through Wyoming and Montana to gather information on their experiences. Option D. proactively researching and confirming the specific concealed firearm laws of Wyoming and Montana, including reciprocity agreements with Utah, and any additional requirements for carrying a concealed firearm in those states. The correct answer is D. Proactively researching and confirming the specific concealed firearm laws of Wyoming and Montana, including reciprocity agreements with Utah, and any additional requirements for carrying a concealed firearm in those states. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a permit holder to navigate the nuances of interstate firearm laws, specifically concerning reciprocity and the legal implications of carrying a concealed firearm in a state where their Utah permit may not be recognized or may have additional requirements. Failure to understand these distinctions can lead to serious legal consequences, including arrest and criminal charges, even for an otherwise law-abiding citizen. The professional challenge lies in proactively ensuring compliance across different jurisdictions, rather than assuming blanket recognition of their permit. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively researching and understanding the specific concealed firearm permit laws of any state the individual intends to visit or reside in. This includes verifying if Utah's permit is recognized through reciprocity agreements, understanding any limitations or additional requirements imposed by the visiting state, such as needing to obtain a permit from that state or adhering to specific storage regulations, and confirming that the firearm being carried is legal in that jurisdiction. This approach is correct because it prioritizes full compliance with the laws of the jurisdiction where the firearm is being carried, which is the paramount legal and ethical obligation. Utah Code Title 76, Chapter 10, Part 5, concerning concealed firearm permits, grants authority within Utah, but does not extend that authority beyond Utah's borders without specific reciprocity agreements. The responsibility for understanding and adhering to the laws of another state rests solely with the permit holder. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that a Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry a concealed firearm in all other states. This is a significant regulatory failure because reciprocity is not universal and is subject to the laws and agreements of each individual state. Relying on this assumption can lead to violations of other states' firearm laws. Another incorrect approach is to only consider the laws of the state where the permit was issued and disregard the laws of any other state where the permit holder might be present. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the territorial nature of laws. Each state has its own sovereign authority to regulate firearms within its borders, and a permit from one state does not supersede the laws of another. A third incorrect approach is to rely on informal advice from other permit holders or online forums without independently verifying the information with official sources. While well-intentioned, such advice may be outdated, inaccurate, or specific to a different set of circumstances. This approach fails to meet the professional standard of ensuring accurate and legally sound compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with situations involving interstate regulations must adopt a proactive and diligent approach. The decision-making process should involve identifying the relevant jurisdictions, thoroughly researching the specific laws and regulations of each jurisdiction, consulting official government sources, such as state police websites or legislative statutes, and seeking clarification from legal counsel if necessary. The guiding principle should always be to err on the side of caution and ensure absolute compliance with the laws of the place where the activity is occurring. Question 19. Regulatory review indicates a Utah resident who currently holds a valid Utah concealed firearm permit wishes to obtain a non-resident concealed firearm permit in Arizona. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure compliance with Arizona's firearm regulations? Option A. Proceed with carrying concealed in Arizona based on the Utah permit, as most states honor permits from other states. Option B. Assume that the Utah concealed firearm permit is recognized in Arizona due to general reciprocity agreements between states. Option C. Research Arizona's specific requirements for non-resident concealed firearm permits, including any necessary application materials, background checks, and training, and verify Arizona's reciprocity status with Utah. Option D. Contact the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification to inquire about Arizona's recognition of Utah permits, without independently verifying Arizona's specific application process for non-residents. Correct answer is C. Research Arizona's specific requirements for non-resident concealed firearm permits, including any necessary application materials, background checks, and training, and verify Arizona's reciprocity status with Utah. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Utah resident applying for a non-resident concealed firearm permit in a state with different reciprocity laws. The core difficulty lies in navigating the complex and varied legal landscape of firearm permits across different jurisdictions, ensuring compliance with the laws of both the applicant's home state and the state where the permit is sought, while also understanding the implications of existing permits. Misinterpreting these laws can lead to serious legal consequences, including permit denial, revocation, or even criminal charges. Careful judgment is required to accurately assess the applicant's eligibility and the proper procedure for obtaining the desired permit. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves thoroughly researching the specific concealed firearm permit laws of the state where the non-resident permit is being sought. This includes understanding that state's requirements for non-resident applicants, any specific training or documentation needed, and how it interacts with the applicant's existing Utah permit. The Utah permit's validity in other states is governed by reciprocity agreements, which are state-specific. Therefore, the applicant must verify if the target state recognizes Utah permits for concealed carry, and if not, what steps are necessary to obtain a permit from that state. This approach prioritizes direct compliance with the laws of the jurisdiction where the permit is sought, acknowledging that reciprocity is not automatic and requires verification. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is assuming that a Utah concealed firearm permit automatically grants the right to carry concealed in any other state due to reciprocity. This fails to recognize that reciprocity is a matter of agreement between states, and not all states have agreements with Utah, or the agreements may have specific limitations. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on general information about firearm laws without verifying the specific requirements for non-resident permits in the target state. This could lead to submitting an incomplete or incorrect application. Finally, attempting to carry concealed without confirming the legal status of the Utah permit in the target state, or without obtaining the necessary permit from the target state, constitutes a direct violation of that state's laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to advising clients on concealed firearm permit matters. This involves first identifying the client's home state and the state where they intend to carry. Next, a detailed review of the laws of the intended carry state is paramount, focusing on non-resident permit requirements and reciprocity with the client's home state permit. If reciprocity is uncertain or absent, the professional must guide the client through the process of obtaining a permit in the intended carry state. Documentation and training requirements must be meticulously checked for both states involved. This structured process ensures that advice is accurate, legally sound, and protects the client from potential legal entanglements. Question 20. Performance analysis shows a client's Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit expired 45 days ago. The standard renewal fee is $50. And Utah law stipulates a late fee of $10 for each month or portion thereof that the permit is expired beyond its renewal date. If the client wishes to renew their permit immediately, what is the total financial obligation for the renewal? Option A, $70. Option B, $80. Option C, $50. Option D, $60. The correct answer is A, $70. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a financial professional to navigate the complexities of non-resident concealed firearm permit requirements in Utah, specifically concerning the financial implications of permit renewal and the accurate calculation of associated fees. Misinterpreting or miscalculating these fees can lead to significant financial penalties for the client and potential regulatory issues for the advisor. The professional must ensure adherence to Utah's specific fee structure and renewal timelines to avoid adverse consequences. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves accurately calculating the total renewal fee by considering the base renewal fee and any applicable late fees based on the number of days past the expiration date. This approach directly addresses the client's need for precise financial information regarding their Utah non-resident concealed firearm permit renewal. Utah Code Section 53-5-704 outlines the renewal fees and procedures, and understanding these provisions is crucial. Specifically, The law details a base renewal fee and a late fee that accrues after the expiration date. A correct calculation would involve determining the number of days the permit is expired and applying the statutory late fee. For example, if the renewal fee is $50 and the late fee is $10 per month or portion thereof, and the permit is expired for 45 days, the total fee would be $50 base, plus $10 late fee for the first month, plus $10 late fee for the second month. As 45 days constitutes a portion of the second month, equals $70. This meticulous attention to detail ensures compliance and prevents unexpected financial burdens for the client. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely applying the base renewal fee without accounting for any potential late fees. This fails to comply with Utah's statutory requirements for late renewals, as outlined in Utah Code Section 53-5-704, which mandates additional charges for renewals submitted after the expiration date. Another incorrect approach is to estimate the late fee without a precise calculation based on the number of days expired. This introduces an unacceptable level of inaccuracy and could lead to underpayment or overpayment, both of which are problematic. A third incorrect approach is to assume the renewal fee is a flat rate regardless of when the renewal is processed, ignoring the specific provisions for late renewals within Utah law. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the regulatory framework governing permit renewals. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first identifying the specific jurisdiction, Utah, and the relevant regulatory framework, Utah Code concerning concealed firearm permits. They must then consult the most current fee schedule and renewal guidelines provided by the Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification. A systematic approach involves 1. Determining the permit's expiration date, 2. Calculating the number of days past expiration, 3. Identifying the base renewal fee, 4. Calculating any applicable late fees based on the statutory structure, and 5. Summing these to arrive at the total accurate renewal cost. This methodical process ensures accuracy, compliance, and provides the client with reliable financial guidance.